Welcome to the 180 podcast, where we tell the stories of real lives radically changed by a relationship with Jesus Christ. Today, we're here with Johnny Gaeta, and we're excited to hear his story of struggle and victory. So, welcome, Johnny. We're excited to
Thank
talk with
you.
you today. So, this is an exciting time for me because I've been wanting to talk with you about your testimony for a long time. Just for context, Johnny's my pastor, and it's been a tremendous privilege for me to get to know him in a brother in Christ way.
Yeah.
And this is one of those settings where we strive to tell people's story because your story might sound just like somebody else that is going to log on and listen to this podcast. And I know a little bit about your story, and I want everybody else to hear that as well. So looking forward to it. One of the
Yeah.
things we really like to do, a lot of people think people's testimonies are when I got saved and forward.
Yeah.
But one of the really important things is that we understand people's backstory, what I call their origin story, because many times their childhood, their life before Christ shaped and influenced their perception of faith.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, starting there, talk to me about how faith looked in your family when you were young. What were those influences with your family? Some people it was a help. Some people it was a struggle and led them further away.
Yeah.
And God gripped them in a different way.
Yeah.
No right or wrong answer.
Right.
But
Right.
love to hear kind of your origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up in San Jose, you know, basically my family, everybody was raised Catholic.
Okay.
So we come from the Catholic background. And, so growing up, we didn't go to church every Sunday. It was kind of hit and miss, more on Easter and Christmas and stuff like that. But my dad, he really wanted to raise all of us with a sense of faith. And so early on, he enrolled me and my sister into Catholic school. And so, yeah. And so I went to Catholic school there in San Jose. The school is called St. Leo's. And I started in first grade and went all the way up to just fourth grade. I mean, it was expensive, so, I mean, they really couldn't afford it. He struggled to do it.
Yeah.
But again, he really wanted us to be raised with a faith. That's how he was raised.
Nice.
And as my story progresses, you'll see, I had a praying grandmother, and that faith, that seed that was sown of faith really brought me back when I really, really needed change in my life. So that seed was sown.
Yeah.
But of course, growing up, we a lot of times our surroundings or our influence in our life.
Sure.
So growing up in the 80s, really, what was going on during that time? There was rap music was coming out, music videos were coming out. And so those were a lot of my influences, and there was some troubles within my family. Me and my dad, we butted heads a lot. He was a little verbal abusive, even towards my mom, towards us. There was a lot of difficulties in our family.
Sure.
And I look back and now I can see, first of all, children don't come with handbooks. They do the best that they can.
Amen.
Yeah. But he had some troubles. He had some hard things that he had to deal with. One of my older sisters, she got hit by a drunk driver, and was killed. And he was driving home from work and was behind the car that hit her. And so she died in his arms, and, it really affected him. He says he doesn't even remember moving out of that house, because they moved out of that house right after that.
Wow.
He had just really kind of lost it, and he got really angry with God during that time. He didn't understand why. And so, there's a lot of different things that I think happened within my parents' relationship that affected us as kids.
Sure. Well, the loss of a child is only one piece of it, right?
Yeah.
That trauma is gonna live with you, right? But
Right.
then to be present, right? To be there,
Yeah.
brings an entirely different level of trauma to your father, and we don't always navigate those things well.
Yeah.
And so, that's where we got to have grace, for
Yeah.
people going through those things. So, continue.
Yeah.
Please.
So, I mean, my dad, he was, he tried, and he was always involved with me in sports and stuff. And
Yeah.
I played baseball and football since I was little. And like I said, he was always a coach. But he was pretty harsh. He was pretty harsh in some things. And it got to a point where, at one point I didn't even really want to play anymore,
Mm,
just because, you know, how angry he would get if I
yeah.
made a mistake or whatnot,
Right. Wasn't fun anymore.
No, no.
Yeah.
And I started having those resentments. Um,
What a good lesson for us as fathers, though, right?
yeah,
To be able to look back and go, okay, that's how it impacted me.
yeah.
Let me not make that same
Same
mistake,
mistake.
or speak into other brothers' lives who are maybe coaching, or,
Yeah,
maybe have that tendency to be that harsh coach.
yeah,
Now, some discipline and some toughness is okay,
yeah,
but to the level you're talking about, could be a struggle.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I recall one time I was pitching a game and he went and stood right behind the backstop. And I mean, I couldn't throw a strike for nothing.
It's not helping, Dad.
Yeah. My coach came out and said, you know what, time out. He comes out and talks to me. He goes, what's going on? He goes, is it because your dad's here? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm going to ask him to leave. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
You could ask him to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he struggled with anger
Yeah.
and rage. And again, I don't know all that was going on with him,
Yeah.
but it created a fear of him. And so, I didn't know how to process all that.
Sure.
I would just kind of isolate myself, you know.
Yeah.
And there was times where my parents would be arguing in the kitchen, and my dad, he got physically abusive sometimes with my mom even.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in my room one time and I was looking up at the cross because all of our rooms had a cross because we're raised Catholic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I was asking Jesus, why?
Hmm.
Why is this happening? And it's amazing because later on in my story, he brings me back to that place. He brings me back to that exact moment. Yeah. And I hear this voice in the depths of my soul saying, Johnny, I need to take that from you because it's destroying you. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it was destroying your father.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, again, my brain keeps going back to grace. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was dealing with stuff outside of a spiritual realm the best he could.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle.
Yeah.
Right. And you not having a spiritual, background yet,
Right.
we're struggling to know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, those seeds you're talking about, even crying out to Jesus early on,
Yeah.
not even knowing him yet,
Yeah. Not even knowing him yet.
but help me,
Yeah.
tell me why.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, like somebody listening might say, yeah, that's what pushed me away from the faith.
Right.
That's why I won't listen to a Christian tell me about faith.
Yeah.
And I'd encourage them to keep listening because
Yeah.
the story gets good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going through Catholic school, I really didn't understand all that was being taught there, but I did. I ended up as an altar boy and, just doing different things within the church. But still, I always was looking for a place to kind of fit in
Sure.
because, you're trying to find your identity as a young person.
Yeah.
And, the only really identity that I seen being portrayed to me again, especially as I got older, was gangs because gangs were prominent in that location where I was living. What was on TV, what was being portrayed on TV, what was being portrayed through music.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you start getting to a place where you glorify those things and you want to aspire to become those things because you think that's what's cool. That's what's
Right.
being accepted.
Right. What a what a lesson for parents. Like if they don't think these influences are having an impact on their children,
Right. Yeah.
careful,
Yeah.
because we're hearing something to say, look, the simple TV show or the simple music video, the MTV of the time, right?
Yeah.
Glorifying women, glorifying the gang culture,
Hmm.
right? Had an impact on what was acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, struggling with our authority figure at that point, our father,
Yeah.
right? We start to
Yeah.
latch on to those things,
Yeah.
right? That are attractive to us.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that I think about now looking back is, my dad was a provider.
mhm,
He worked with PG&E, retired from PG&E, worked at Lockheed for a little bit,
mhm,
was in the military, but he was a hard worker. And when he got home, he was just disconnected,
mhm.
and so there was no real communication there, and so I hope to do differently now.
Well, and your guys listening. Hopefully, there's some guys listening that this is hitting him between the eyes. Right?
Yeah,
That's not an uncommon story that I hear from wives.
right. It's a common one,
Right?
and especially me now in this position
Yeah.
and listening to men and their stories and everything that's happening. It's
Right.
it's very common.
They make the money. They
Yeah.
bring it home. They do a great job. They work hard. They're disciplined in that way.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything,
No.
right? That's not what our spouse, that's not what our child needs.
Right.
They need the presence of who we are,
Right.
and who we're called to be as that leader.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's I think that'll resonate for sure. That emptiness when you get home,
Hmm.
that's got to change
Yeah.
for men.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, you were talking about your dad being a provider, and I can relate. Um, that's something we've actually tried to instill in our kids
Yeah.
is, effort equals reward.
Yeah.
Right. There's
Yeah.
there's a value in working hard,
Yeah.
but spiritually we have to expand that view.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one. God calls us to work hard and not be slack. Right. Not
Right.
not
Right.
be sluggards, which is just lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's a admirable quality.
Yeah.
But when the wife says we're absent, that's when we have to change that perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And looking back, I mean, I see that he really cared about us,
Of
right? I
course.
mean, Catholic school, football, I mean, all this stuff. It's just, you know, um, I, again, we don't come with handbooks.
Yeah.
And so,
And he wasn't operating with that foundation of Christ, right?
right.
He had some spiritual Catholic understanding and background. But
Yeah.
when we don't, that's why we talk about identity and our foundation so much, right?
Yeah.
When there is a foundation that we can refer back to. The only instruction book we have really is the Bible, right?
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't address everything like word for word,
Yeah.
but at least it gives us a place to fall back to some standards of how we're going to operate our household,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And even
Absolutely.
personally, how we're going to act, react, treat other people,
Yeah.
right? And absent of that, we just do it naturally. And sometimes it doesn't come out very well,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
right.
guilty, right?
Yeah.
Like I haven't always, spoken to my wife, how I should. Now, hopefully that's rare,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in somebody who doesn't have a foundation in the Lord, it's more frequent.
Yeah. I mean, what do they have to go on, right?
Right. And look, I'm not condemning, right?
Yeah.
I don't expect somebody who doesn't know the Lord and doesn't have the faith background and the standards to act like a Christian. Why would I have that expectation
Yeah.
of them?
Exactly.
Now, if you claim Christ,
Yeah.
then I do have that expectation of you because we're called to be like Christ
Yeah.
as much as we can. So,
Yeah. Well, I definitely had expectations, I guess, on my father, but looking back, one of the things that really, really helped me in that area was after coming to faith and the Lord revealing to me that sin in itself is like cancer,
mhm.
and people are sick and they don't even know that they're sick.
Yeah,
And so my dad, in a sense, was sick from sin and didn't even really know that he was sick.
sure.
Right. And so it really changed my perspective on my father. And it
Yeah,
allowed me to forgive him and to be able to love him right where he's at,
yeah, yeah.
you
That's
know?
good. That's good. So going along sports,
Yeah.
you're starting to test the waters a little bit, starting to rebel a little bit. I know, things took a kind of a negative turn. So it sounds like it was in kind of in those teenage years. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've always looked back at and I've wondered why I didn't care so much for even my grades.
Mm,
I mean, I love playing football. It was an
sure.
out for me to, let out my aggression and everything else.
Yeah.
And oftentimes my coaches were get super frustrated with me because they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you have potential to get a scholarship and you're blowing it."
Mm,
Because you can't keep up your grades, you're cutting school, and look at you're not going to be playing football if that's the way it's going to be.
yeah. They're saying I've seen this a million times.
Yeah, yeah. But again, as I got older, especially into like my high school years, um, you know, I just I gravitated towards again my environment, my surroundings,
Yeah.
and what I thought was cool. And so, yeah, I mean, I did play sports and end up in trouble and not being able to finish some years and all this mess.
Right.
But I gravitated towards the gang culture,
Mm,
and I ended up in a really bad place. And sometimes that I think that happens. You hang out with some people and you think, oh, it's not that bad. It's just fun. And then it revolves it grows bigger into something that you're all of a sudden you're standing there and you're going, wait, how did I get here?
right. And
And,
you feel stuck.
yeah, and how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
And that's really what started happening, especially towards the end of my high school years.
Yeah. So I think of, maybe a young person that might be listening, right? And their parents, might be saying, even right now,
Hmm.
hey, that influence, that guy you're hanging out with, that girl you're hanging out with, it's no good.
Yeah,
It's leading you down a path that's not good.
yeah,
And a young person might be saying, you just don't get it, mom. You just don't get it, dad. Everything's fine. I've got it under control.
yeah,
I want them to hear
yeah,
you to say that influence can lead you to a place where you don't realize how far you got down that road and you don't know how to get out.
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It starts with a little bit of marijuana and then, drinking marijuana. And then, for me, it ended up with cocaine and mushrooms and acid and then methamphetamine. And then next thing you know, I'm surrounded by these people,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's like, wow, how did I get here? And then it morphs into um the drug dealing aspect of it, and that's what was being glorified through music, through
Yeah.
MTV, through music videos. All that was being glorified, and the pursuit of money, the pursuit of sex, the pursuit of relationship, I mean, all that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your identity, you're going to gravitate towards those things that are
Right.
in your environment. And that's exactly what happened,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. You were identifying in absence of a firm foundation, you
Yeah.
were identifying with something.
Yeah.
You'll hear the phrase, we were designed to worship.
Yeah.
And in absence of God in our life, we will worship something.
Yeah.
And at that time, you were worshiping that culture,
Yeah,
right? You were
absolutely.
so immersed, and one little piece led to a more escalated piece to where, now you're dealing it. Now
Mhm. Yeah. Not knowing what it was really gonna cost me.
right.
You don't think about the cost, I think oftentimes I thought, "Oh, well, that won't happen to me.
Mm,
Oh, that won't happen to me."
yeah.
And then it got to a place where I was enslaved
Yeah.
to it, and I was even afraid of the people that I was around.
And
And
then you
my
just live in paranoia.
Right, right.
Mm. So, kind of walk me through that. So you're in the culture, you're in the life now, and it's, you're at a point where it's like, how did I get here? But it's hard to break away,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So tell me how kind of it evolved or devolved into, I know you spent some time, in prison,
Yeah.
and so kind of walk me through kind of this progression of how bad, it got.
Yeah. So again, really, it started almost towards the end of high school or in the right, towards my senior year.
Yeah.
I actually ended up going to juvenile hall a couple of times. And again, so I'm being placed in that place now, and I'm being having more influence of that culture
Yeah.
and that environment. And so, that begins to be the only thing that you really know how to do. And so again, it started just building and building and building. And then out of high school, really starting to get into the party life, and the drugs, but still not thinking too much of where it would lead me,
Hmm.
and
Just enjoying life
just enjoying life. Right.
from a worldly perspective. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so, I had friends that their whole families were wrapped up in the Mexican mafia.
Hmm.
And so I started, next thing you know, I was gravitated towards that as well,
Yeah.
and so towards the end, um, man, I just, like I said, I ended up in a really, really bad spot. And it all had to do with the drugs and selling drugs and everything else. And things got really, really messed up with a particular person. And again, like I said, I found myself in a place with these guys that really didn't care. They would, if you just look at them, they're the type of guy you're like, wow, this guy will snatch the life out of me without even thinking twice, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I said, how did I get to this place?
Yeah.
And so some things happened where I ended up um, basically doing a home invasion, but it was just myself. But it was because I brought a certain person into a place, and the drug deals went bad, and everything went bad. So I was ordered to go there and handle the situation.
Hmm.
And if not, there was some repercussions that were going to happen that would not only affect me, but affect my family.
Mm.
And so I went to this house um, with the intent to commit murder, you know. And like I said, I had no idea how I really got to this place,
Right. Yeah.
So the only way I could possibly do anything like that was to get really high on a lot of drugs. And so I ended up at this house, and I end up basically breaking into the house. Without going into all the detail of it,
Yeah.
we ended up in a struggle, and I had overcome the struggle, got him in a chair, and tied him up, put a blindfold on him, and basically told him that his life was going to end. But when I got to that point, I couldn't do it.
Mm.
I just couldn't do it, And I remember the only things that would come out of my mouth after I told him that his life was going to end. And as I held the knife up to him, I said, "God forgive me."
Hmm.
and I dropped the knife and I whispered in his ear that he needed to leave the state of California and never come back.
Hmm.
You know,
Wow.
and so at that time I grabbed the keys. The car was supposed to go to a chop shop, and all this stuff was supposed to happen. Well, you know, none of that happened. I did take off with the car, but was in a daze and really high on a lot of drugs and didn't know what I was going to do.
Right.
Finally, I ended up at the house where the car was supposed to go, and by that time they had a all points bulletin out for me,
Hmm.
so they were looking for me.
So the authorities found out somehow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But they didn't have, I guess, the whole story. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so when I pull up to the house, and I, you know, in that struggle, there was a lot of blood because there was a struggle, and you know, and so my pants had his blood all over them, and so when I pull up to the house with the car, as I get out, I start walking up, and the guy opens up the door and he says, "You can't be here. You messed up. You need to go. Like now. There's
Hmm.
police looking for you everywhere." And I was like, "Oh man, okay." So I get, I didn't want to go back to the car.
Yeah.
So I leave the car there, which was parked actually a little bit down the street, and I take off walking, and I jumped the fence, this fence, and I ended up at a church. And there's a basketball game going on at the church, and I had changed my clothes, and I left the bloody clothes in the car. And actually, with his driver's license, the guy's driver's license that I did the home invasion on, in
Hmm.
my pocket, because I took it from him, saying, "Look, we know who you are. You got to go." And so all that was left in the car. And so I end up at this church, and there's a basketball game going on, and I asked someone for a ride to get out of there.
Hmm.
And I was trying to get back to my girlfriend's house at the time and then figure out what I was going to do. I wanted to leave the state, really.
Yeah.
And so, kind of a long story short, I end up talking to this guy, and I give him this whole excuse saying I ran out of gas and I need to get back to my house. And so he kindly gives me a ride, you know, and
Not knowing what had
not
just
not
happened.
knowing anything, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Anyways, so I have him where my girlfriend lived. She lived in a court. So I had him drive close to the house, and I get out of the car and I jump the fence and end up at her sliding glass door, and I knock on the door, and she had a daughter that was a teenager, and she started freaking out like, "Oh my gosh, he's going to kill us," you know. And I'm like, "Just calm down, you know." And she lets me in, and she tells me that the detectives were looking for me.
Hmm.
Um, but I still didn't know what happened to the guy. Honestly, I didn't know if the injuries, if he had succumbed to the injuries or what was going on. All I knew is I needed to get out of there.
Yeah.
And so I stayed the night there. And then the next morning, she allowed me to get into the trunk of her car, and she took me to the Greyhound. And I ended up in going to Las Vegas.
Hmm.
I had a family member there in Las Vegas. So I called my aunt and told her kind of what was going on. And she kind of understood this lifestyle.
Hmm.
Again, so where we lived at in San Jose, gangs were prominent.
Sure.
And so her ex-husband was a gang member. He ended up getting killed execution style.
Hmm.
So she kind of understood the
Yeah.
predicament that I was in.
Right.
And so as I told her everything that had happened, you know, she allowed me to stay there.
Hmm.
She was encouraging me to go turn myself in.
Hmm.
Um, but she also called my parents, and my parents end up flying out and talking to me and saying, "Look, you got to come back. You got to turn yourself in."
Yeah. How old are you about this time?
I was, gosh, about 20,
Okay.
21.
So yeah, still
Yeah,
young.
still young. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they talked to me, and they convinced me to come back to San Jose. So they rent a car and we drive back. And on the way back, I'm like, can we just put this on hold for a while? And my dad was super upset. He's like, look, they've looked everywhere for you. The only place that I think that you might be able to go is your grandmother's house. So if you go there, it's only going to be for a short time. You're going to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And so I agreed to do that. But the thing was with that was where my grandmother lived. She lived again right in the neighborhood of a very prominent gang. A lot of members from the Mexican mafia lived right there. One of them lived right next door to her. Was
It's not a good place for
not a
you.
good place at all.
Yeah.
And so when I get there, they already know kind of what's took place as well. And so they're like, well, what are you doing here? You need to get out of here, because if something happens and you're outside and you take off running, that gives them the right to search our house.
Yeah. They didn't want you anywhere near
They
them.
didn't want, yeah, exactly. So anyways, um, I stayed there against what they wanted. And one night they broke into my grandmother's house. They
Mhm.
cut the lock, and they threatened my grandmother
Mm.
to kill her if I stayed, And so I ended up leaving and was back on the run again. I didn't turn myself in.
Mm.
And I ended up, I had some drugs on me. And so I just wanted to get back out of California. And I ended up over by the San Jose Arena and trying to sell what I had to earn some money to get out of there. And when I was there was another um, gang that was prominent in that area, and I couldn't sell in their territory,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so they said I needed to get out of there, and so I took off from there, and I was walking down the railroad tracks, and there was a police officer that came around the corner driving, and I seen him, and he pulled in front of a big rig that was parked there and cut me off. And he approached me and asked me what I was doing there. And I was high on drugs. And he said, "Well," he says, "who are you?" And I gave him my cousin's name. I gave my fake name, right? Of course, trying to get out of it. And so, but I had no proof of that. So he puts me in the back of the cop car, and he's trying to figure out who I really am.
Yeah. He could tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened. I think maybe he might have had a call or something, but he ended up letting me back out of the police car and said, "Look, if I see you in this area again, I'm going to arrest you." And so he took off. I started walking, and next thing you know, there was like, all of a sudden, I was surrounded by police,
Hmm.
and they came from every corner. And so they end up finding out because I gave them my cousin's name with my parents' phone number. And so that he actually made contact with my parents.
Oh.
And so that's how they end up finding out.
Yeah.
And so next, I was being surrounded. I tried to take off and run from them. The one police officer, I'll never forget this. I wanted to fight with him. I was trying to fight to get away. And this guy bear hugged me. And he said, "Son, we want to help you."
Mm.
And it stopped me in my tracks,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Probably hadn't anybody say that, or you hadn't felt like somebody wanted to help you in a long time.
yeah,
Probably. Yeah.
yeah, I was on the run.
Yeah.
I was tired. I was beat up. I was tired, and I was at the end of myself,
Yeah.
and so they ended up taking me in. I had warrants for other things as well. And so I ended up in main jail in San Jose, and, really just angry with where my life had gone and expecting myself to go to prison for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't know, where I was at. I mean, where I was really at. I was just angry.
Yeah.
And so, after a few weeks of being in the main jail, they have a separate camp in San Jose, which is a minimum security camp. And so I ended up getting released to that minimum security camp, which I thought was crazy. It should never have happened,
Yeah.
you know? And so when I get to that camp, I come walking down with all my stuff on my shoulder, and I see a friend of mine that I knew from a different area, but someone that I knew from the streets.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "Praise God." I was like, "What?" Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? You know? And I'll never forget this. The look on his face was different. He had like this almost like a glow. I mean, it sounds weird, but
Yeah.
it was, you know, and he had this joy and peace about him, which I'd never seen before,
Yeah.
especially coming from him.
Much less in prison.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he tells me, "Praise God," right? And I'm just like, okay, whatever, you know. And so I continue walking and I get my stuff down and he wants to pray for me. And so he prays for me. And I've never heard anybody speak in tongues before, you know, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's jabbering on about, I have no idea, you know, I thought it was really odd, really weird.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't want nothing to do with it at that point. You know, I was okay, whatever. But man, he lost his mind or something,
Yeah.
you know, and, but I knew I needed peace. And so I was there for some time and I got involved with the program called RCP. And what it is, it's for guys that are looking at prison time. And it gives them a bunch of classes. We have to march. We have to make sure our beds are made tight. You know, our uniforms are pressed and ironed and shoes are shined up, all this stuff. Right. And we had to do all these classes and everything, but I was still super angry. I'd sit in those classes and I'd just be, I guess I had this look of disgust on my face.
Hmm.
And I knew I needed peace. And one evening, you know, they allow you out to make phone calls and stuff. And during that time, they do a chapel service there.
Hmm.
And so I was outside and I seen these people walking in to do the chapel service. And I just recall looking at them. They seemed like giants. They seemed to walk in this confidence that I hadn't. It just caught my attention for some reason. And so I walk into the chapel and they're setting up and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about my life and where I'm at. And I knew I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison.
Hmm.
I really didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I got to this place. And so as they're setting up and they're starting to warm up, they start warming up to Amazing Grace. And I sit there and I'm looking and I notice a cross on the wall. And I thought to myself, look I don't know if you are who you say you are. As I looked at that cross and I thought about Jesus. And I said, if you are, I need you right now.
Hmm.
And all these thoughts started running through my mind about what people would think. Because it's like now, you know, my eyes got watery. I got a big lump in my throat. My heart was being tugged on.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to break. I didn't want to because I was afraid of what other people might think.
Right. I'm weak. I'm, you know,
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
And you don't want to show weakness in there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, but I got to this place in my heart and in my mind where I said, I don't care what anybody thinks. I need that. And brother, what I felt, like a drowning man that caught my breath.
Mm.
Like I caught my breath,
So
you
good.
know? And I knew that I knew at that exact moment that he is who he says he is. And I'm telling you, the only words that were coming out of my mouth was Jesus is alive. I didn't even stay for the service. I got up and I walked out and I was sobbing. And the only things that I was able to say was, Jesus is alive, you know? And people thought I lost my mind. The gang members, the homies that I was hanging out with in there that knew me from
Yeah.
multiple times being in there, they were like, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as you tell your story, I'm thinking back to even when you were contemplating ending someone's life, and the
Yeah.
grace that God showed to really show up, because
Yeah.
you stated, God forgive me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think back to the grace of you calling out to Jesus's name back in your childhood room, saying, God, I don't understand,
Yeah.
right? And these moments of God showing up in maybe a veiled way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But now, in a very real way,
Very real way.
sitting in a chapel in prison,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
saying, God's amazing grace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That same cross, on the wall that you had in your childhood home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And God really revealing himself without anybody preaching the gospel to you,
No.
right? Nobody told you systematic theology. Nobody told you, like,
No.
God implanted that in your heart, that I am real.
Absolutely.
I'm the only peace that you're looking for.
Yeah. You know, it's so amazing. I've heard a lot of testimonies. I've worked at Teen Challenge. I heard a lot of testimonies of guys just asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
If you are who you say you are, and God, he meets us right there in that moment, you know,
Yeah.
so it's not, it doesn't have to be, that I'm going to church and sometimes it's our life circumstances that brings us to that point where we cry out and we aren't even sure if he is who he says he is. And he in his grace understands that, and he comes in and he meets us right there.
I've
Isn't
there,
that amazing?
there's a story that a friend told me about a friend that just wanted nothing to do with anything spiritual.
Yeah.
And he said they were in a house. I don't remember this. It was a party or whatever. He was sitting on a couch or something. And he said, man, the Lord would have to hit me over the head. And a book fell off the shelf and hit him in the head.
Oh, wow.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's literally what, it's like, sitting in that chapel in prison, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like saying, Lord, you have to hit me over the head. Bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. So, the Lord gets a hold of you. You're still in prison.
Yeah.
Things still aren't, looking great,
Right.
from a legal
Yeah.
perspective.
I have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. So, walk through the, what's about to happen, moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So, at that point, I developed a real hunger for getting into God's word.
Mm.
Psalms 107 talks about the man that wandered in a desert wasteland.
Mm.
And now, when I was trying to sell drugs out behind the arena, it was like a desert wasteland,
Mm.
right? There was guys that were coming up to me and asking just for me to pour a little bit of drugs on their hand.
Mm.
It was like zombies,
Yeah.
and in Psalms 107, it talks about that. It talks about, being hungry and not being able to find any food, being thirsty and in a desert, dry place.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that, I was in awe because it was telling my story,
Yeah.
but
Painting a visual picture of
yeah,
the last, 5 years of or
Yeah.
whatever of your life. Yeah.
yeah. But then they cried out to the Lord and he saved them. He broke the chains. And I'm like, how could this be?
Right.
And so anyways, I really started to develop a love for God's word at that point.
Mm.
And the people I ran with, there are some repercussions that could happen when you decide to make a stand and not follow them anymore and,
Right.
and kind of, and do something different. And so what they call it is a dropout. And as a dropout, you're open to attack. You're no longer underneath the protection. And people don't take kindly to that in that atmosphere,
Sure.
and so, but I didn't care. I didn't care. I knew what I knew, and I knew what was real at that point. And so, and some of those guys, they didn't fully understand, and they were, kind of saying some stuff to me, oh, you're a dropout, this, that. But as time went on, I'll tell you this, some of those guys, after chow time, um, called me over to their bunk and said, "Hey, John, like what happened to you is real, huh?" I said, "Absolutely."
Hmm.
They said, "We know it. I could see it, and I don't want to do this for the rest of my life."
Hmm.
What'd you do? I said, "I just asked God a question."
I just cried out.
Yeah.
I didn't have it in me. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, the Bible study that we started in there, it just started to grow and grow and grow,
Hmm.
and oftentimes I would get up before chow time, before the guard would come and wake us up. And, so I would get up before that. And one time I walked outside of the barracks and I got on my knees right there on the pavement. And I just started thanking God
Hmm.
for what he had saved me from.
Yeah.
And that's when he brought me back to that place in my room as a little boy.
Hmm.
Like I had that vision, that exactly where I was sitting on my bed. I can remember it to this day, where the cross was and what was happening in the kitchen, and that question that I had for him. He brought that back to me as I was kneeling there on the asphalt in the
Hmm.
dark. And I heard that voice, "Johnny, I need to take this from you, for it's destroying you."
Hmm.
I was like, I had no idea that something that happened to me, that I experienced as a child, was affecting me as an adult,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
You never, and you're not really dwelling on it.
no,
Like you're not thinking about it all the time, but it was an implanted thing. And look at the power
yeah,
that we have as fathers
yeah,
to implant, sadly, negative things, traumas in our children
yeah,
that might take a lifetime.
yeah,
Might take a
absolutely.
short time, but might take a lifetime to overcome.
Yeah,
The joy is we also have that same power
yeah,
in the positive,
yeah,
right?
yeah, we
We can
do. We
implant,
do.
you know, a legacy, in our children,
Yeah,
on the positive side as well.
absolutely. And one of the things that God gave me in that time, in that moment as well, was I was like a little kid that they, through all those classes, they talk about inner child and all this other stuff, right?
Sure.
And but really, I got this picture of myself as a little child in a dark dungeon,
Mm,
and Jesus opened up the door and reached out and grabbed me out of that.
yeah.
So that child, that inner child within myself, had been bruised and wounded and was trapped in fear and in darkness all these years.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. And so that's what he was saying to me.
Yeah.
It's time, and he reached out his hand. He pulled me out of that,
Yeah.
you know. And so after that, it was funny because the guard, he'd come to wake us up and he'd see me outside. "What are you doing out here?" And I'd known him, and it was so funny because, he's like, "Man, you can't be out here." He goes, "What happened to you? You're not the same person anymore." And I got to talking to him about Jesus and stuff.
You're right. I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, after some time too, one of the counselors there, Tyrone McGee, uh, he seen me when I was at my worst. He seen me when I was angry and mad. And then I come to his class, and all of a sudden there's this huge weight lifted from my shoulders. And
Yeah.
after class, he goes, "Come here. I need to talk to you." He goes, "What happened to you?" He goes, "God touched you, huh?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, he did." He goes, "Brother, it's written all over your face."
Yeah.
You know,
And that's, we see that. whether you call it a, glow, call it a,
Yeah.
just a
Countenance.
countenance, you call it whatever, but there's something physical that you can tell when somebody's life is changed by Jesus.
Yeah.
And it really is unexplainable.
Yeah.
Like you can't explain that to
No,
someone
no.
except that you need to cry out
Yeah.
like I did,
Yeah.
because there's nothing you can do. You keep doing the things you're going to do, it's going to keep going the same way it's
Yeah.
gone for you.
Yep. It's going to keep on getting worse.
Right.
Yeah.
And you found your bottom,
Yeah.
in that chapel,
Yeah.
in prison, and thankfully,
Yeah.
right,
Absolutely.
because there's some people that don't, and life ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. After it's all said and done, I was like, I knew that the Lord saved me for a reason. And, during that time, in one of those classes, they asked us to draw a picture of where we would want to see our life in 5 years from now.
hmm,
And because of everything that had happened, everything shifted. I drew a picture of me, a wife, and 2 kids
hmm.
in front of a church in the mountains.
Yeah. Not even not knowing,
Not knowing.
right?
I had no idea, but I had God put in me. I did. I had this desire to. I, I remember at one point I felt like I just want to live in God's church, the
Yeah.
safety of that,
Yeah.
and be protected in that, because I knew how messed up the world is as well, and I knew how easily it is to go back into something like that, and so I just really just had that strong desire. And in my heart of hearts, I because of my love for the word, and because things started I started to understand like what I was reading,
Yeah.
and it just made sense. It was like this huge puzzle that just interconnected with it,
Yeah.
and so I really had this desire to become a pastor. But I had no idea how that would ever happen, or even if that would be a possibility. I had no
Yeah.
clue.
Yeah. You're like, I'm still sitting in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all that stuff happened. But still, I did have legal things that I still needed. I had no idea what was going to happen with that.
Yeah.
The warrants, not so much of a big deal, but
Right.
this big case, yeah, what was going to happen with that?
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, and I'm not sure. And I'm now in fellowship with that guy that I knew from the streets that said, "Praise God, let me pray for you," and really it was pretty much me and him. First started out the Bible study, and
Mhm.
we would break bread together. We would have dinner, we would always we would just spend a lot of time together,
Yeah.
and studying God's word and stuff. Well, one day, I get a slip on my bed saying I have to go to this one building, and I walk in the building, and there's a detective there, and he starts asking me questions about what happened, and I couldn't say nothing. I listened to what he was saying, that they knew, and that they were going to charge me with all these charges,
Mhm.
and that I was going away to prison for a very long time. I often wonder what would have happened if I really would have had the courage to tell on myself.
Mhm.
But for some reason, I didn't, I didn't. And the only thing I would say was, I can't say nothing to you without my lawyer present.
It was your legal right to
It was.
not say anything.
It was.
And look, the Lord works all those things out, right?
Yeah.
He has a plan, for our life.
Yeah.
If he would have prompted you, he could have prompted you to speak up,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't have had a choice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
if the Lord saw fit for you to open your mouth in that moment, you would have.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
saw fit that you took your legal right not to, and then the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shortly after that, he got upset, walked away, said, "All right, this is where we're leaving at. Expect these charges to come." And so but I ended up finding out the guy lived.
Okay.
So, but I had no idea where he was at or anything like that. I'm in
Sure.
jail. So I come out of that meeting and I open up God's word and I land on, um, gosh, I think it's Matthew 5. I want to say Matthew 5:8. Therefore, if you come and offer your gift at the altar, and therefore remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift at the altar.
Go.
Go and make amends,
Mm-hmm.
lest he throw you into jail.
Yeah.
Right. And so I took that literally. And as I'm incarcerated, we get out for our phone calls, and I really feel like the Lord's impressing upon me that I need to call that house that I did the home invasion on.
Hmm.
And because there was roommates there, I knew people that would often party there and gather
Mm-hmm.
there. And so he was impressing upon me to call them.
Hmm.
And so before I do that, I call home and I tell my dad what's going on. And he's like, you lost your mind. Don't you realize like everything that you are saying, even on our phones are tapped because of you. They're recording that, you're, what are you doing? And I'm telling him that Jesus told me to do this. He's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so anyways, I get off the phone and I try and make that phone call to that house. I try multiple times. No one picks up. No one picks up. No one picks up. I don't know what else to do, Lord.
Yeah.
And so I kind of leave it at that time. And I was just talking about this with the guys up at Teen Challenge. Right after that, probably the next day or two, I remember I had an overwhelming feeling that I just wanted to get baptized.
Hmm.
There's, how am I going to do that in there?
Yeah.
And I know baptism, as it was explained to me even then, was an outward expression of an inward work. It's a public declaration, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember I jumped in the shower and I said, Lord, baptize me.
Mm-hmm.
Baptize me. And my public declaration is that I will not be involved with the gangs anymore.
Hmm.
I don't care, and that's just that. That was
Yeah.
it was a special moment.
Baptisms takes on all kinds of forms. Man.
Yeah. So my story is not. It's a little bit different, right?
It's all right. Yeah. Everybody's story is their own.
Yeah. So anyways, I go to court a bunch of times for all the other stuff, and I'm in front of the same judge that I've been in front of before multiple times.
Yeah.
But it's just different now. And I remember waiting in the holding cell before you go to court, and I'm talking about the parable of the seed, the sower and the seed. And guys are sitting there listening to me like, what in the world's going on?
Yeah.
But it was an awesome opportunity to witness in there.
Yeah. Captive audience, literally.
Yeah. and to be telling my story.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. So anyways, I get in front of the judge, and I tell him, I said, because I tell him I want to go to a program. And one of the counselors, like Tyrone McGee, told me about a faith-based program. And again, this is back in 98. So, I mean, we're still early on in this testimony, but so he tells me about this faith-based program called City Team. So I go to court and I'm sitting there. They called me up, and the judge is like, you're here again, and you're looking at some time, at least a year minimum. And I said, well, Your Honor, I said, I'd really like the option to go to a 18-month program called City Team. And I think that probably caught his attention right there. I'm asking for more time than,
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways, and in that courtroom, there was a guy there and from City Team, and he stands up and says, Your Honor, I'm from City Team. We have beds available. And so the judge is like, really? And he asks them some questions, and they sit me back down. And after everybody else goes through, they call me back up, and the judge makes a phone call to City Team and ends up confirming that there are beds available. And so now we're going to release me to that program.
Hmm.
you know. Crazy.
Probably not expecting that fast of
No,
yeah, right, of a
not at all.
change. Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah. So anyways, I get back to the yard and just kind of waiting for what was going to happen. I remember my friend ended up getting released, and I still had some time to do, and I was like, wow, this is kind of different, you know?
Yeah.
It
The
felt-
the friend that said praise God. He had
yeah,
gotten released. Okay.
yeah, because we developed a good friendship in
Of
there,
course.
you
Yeah.
know, that was different
Yeah.
from what was before. And but he ended up getting released, and you know, again, but I stood with the Bible study. There were some guys that really changed. Actually, one of them, I still kind of in contact with.
Yeah.
Is still clean and sober to this day
Good.
from that moment. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. So, anyways, I ended up getting released to city team, and one of the times when I was there, we ended up going to a San Jose Giants game, and so we get there, and we get ready to walk up towards the bleachers, and I see three guys that were roommates to the guy that I attacked.
Hmm.
And we catch eyes, and I want to panic and run. And so I turn back around and I go back into where all the concession stands are. And my brothers from city team, like, what's going on? I said, man, I got to get out of here. And they kind of knew a little bit of my story.
Sure.
And I said, that's that guy's roommates. I got to go. And they're like, no, man, let's pray. What is God telling you to do? I said, I don't know. I just want to get out of here.
Panic.
Yeah. Yeah. So they prayed for me, and they asked the question, what is God telling you to do? I said, like I said, I don't know. I just want to go. Well, let's pray again. So they prayed again over me. What is God telling you to do, John? I said, I got to go up there and I got to make amends. I said, I don't know if I could do that. So they prayed for me a third time. They said, we'll walk with you. I said, okay. And so I proceeded to walk up, and they were just kind of like looking at me. And I apologized. I said, look, guys, I'm so sorry for what happened. I know these are just words. They don't, they're just words, but I'm telling you, I'm not the same person as I once was. And I really want to apologize for what happened. I didn't mean for all that to happen.
Hmm.
And they looked at me and they said, you don't look the same. So I sat down away from them. They got up and left the game. And I said, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And the whole night I was thinking, the police were going to come and it was time to fess up, but that never happened.
Hmm.
That never happened. Matter of fact, the DA never picked up the case, and I don't understand, but God,
Yeah.
for somehow, right? And I know my life is indebted, to Christ, because rightfully so, I should not be here, Ryan.
Yeah.